So it's the beginning of June, and now is an appropriate time to float the idea of canceling Pride Month altogether. I think we are more than ready for this. We are so over this stuff. As sane Americans, we are finding our voice again and openly rejecting the idea that we absolutely have to celebrate somebody else's sexuality in order to prove that we are compassionate and loving and inclusive. And if you are somebody that's going to jump in the comments and try to yell at me for this position, answer me this. Why does anybody need a parade to celebrate who they share their private time with? Why do you need banners and a live band and a cheering crowd to validate what you do with your partner behind closed doors? And most importantly, why do you need children to participate in order to have your personal sexual preferences and your entire identity validated? Why? I don't need you to validate my personal choices, and I certainly don't need or want your kids' approval. And if I had that expectation, you'd probably want to have me arrested. So why is it the other way around? So yeah, whether the unhinged left or all of these activists want to accept it or not, this conversation is being had. And in my opinion, it is long overdue. But before we get too much further, please hit the thumbs up button on this video and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you so much for doing both of those things. So as I said, today we're talking about a topic that has the left in a full-blown meltdown. And I know we've got to be a little bit more specific than that, but that is the topic and the idea of canceling Pride Month. That's right. We're all saying it out loud. Let's cancel Pride Month. Now, before you start clutching your pearls and start typing out angry comments to me, hear me out. As myself and many others have repeated over and over and over again, my lack of participation and not wanting the incessant and relentless recognition of the rainbow crowd is not about hate. This isn't about denying anybody's existence. This is about rejecting this cultural juggernaut that has been shoved down people's throats for far too long. And as we've all come to realize by now, Pride Month is not about love and acceptance. It is a 30-day propaganda campaign designed to celebrate sexual identity above all else. It is not enough to live and let live. You have to fly that rainbow flag and buy the Pride-themed cereal and nod along to every corporate ad that is suddenly drenched in glitter. And if you don't, you're a bigot. That's the game. And shockingly, people have gotten sick and tired of being called names and threatened for pointing out what has been blatantly obvious for a long time, which is that this is really about rejecting the values, traditions, and even scientific facts that have created a solid, stable, and thriving society and replacing those things with the destructive idea that anything goes. And if you try to set any sort of moral boundary, it means you're full of hate and you want people to die. And if you protect your kids from it, you're just trying to preserve the cycle of oppression that has been created by white supremacists. In other words, we're tired of those who have had their brains manipulated by propaganda dictate the societal norms and moral standards for the sane and moral majority. But you know who else seems to be getting tired of Pride Month? Major corporate sponsors. There have been several major brands that have either scaled back their funding significantly or canceled it altogether, and this has Pride event organizers panicking and blaming Trump, of course. In this article, it's discussing the shortage of funding for the NYC Pride events due to this issue. It says the retreat of corporate sponsors, including MasterCard, Nissan, and Garnier, follows years of wavering support from companies from LGBTQ causes. It has left Heritage of Pride facing an unexpected shortfall of an estimated $750,000, a difficult blow for an organization whose spending has significantly outstripped its income every year since 2019. When it hosted World Pride, a much larger global gathering. On Wednesday, the organization announced a grassroots fundraising appeal in a bid to keep NYC Pride events free and accessible for all. It said it hoped to raise $25,000 by the end of June. According to a publicly available tax data, Heritage of Pride operated at a loss of more than $2.7 million in 2022 and $1.2 million in 2023 on a budget of roughly $5.5 million. Those challenges have forced the organization to reduce the scope of NYC Pride in recent years. In a statement, it said its long-term goal is to bolster individual giving to diversify our funding streams and reduce reliance on corporate partnerships. This is from Libs of TikTok. It says LGBTQ Pride is seeing a mass exodus of advertisers and sponsors. San Francisco Pride lost 200K. Idaho's biggest Pride event lost 400K. NYC Pride lost 25% of support and are short 750K. Utah Pride is short 400K. Virginia's biggest Pride Fest lost 2 major sponsors. Columbus, Ohio Pride lost 125K. Pride is going broke. And of course, libs are saying that this is due to Trump's bullying and passing anti-LGBTQ legislation, or as the majority of the country would call it, returning to normalcy. But my thoughts on this are as such. One, these major companies probably never wanted to pander to these people in the first place, but felt that they had to, and were probably even coerced into doing so by the last administration under threat of retaliation of some kind, because they actually demonstrated far more fascism and dictatorial tendencies than any other president in my lifetime. And two, that doesn't explain the canceling of events because people are just not showing up. This article said Boise Pride cancels season kickoff, citing insufficient attendance. I mean, holding these events hasn't been banned and no one's going to get in trouble for attending. So maybe, again, in general, people are just tired of feeling like they have to do these things just to avoid someone calling them hateful, especially by a community of people who are going to use that same language against them if they don't bring their children to watch adults parade down the street in bondage gear. And this brings us to a really important question. Was the popularity of these things ever really grassroots or organic, or was the support exactly like what we saw with Kamala Harris's campaign, completely manufactured and hyped up by the media and activists, who are one and the same these days, sprinkled with just enough bullying and intimidation to create the illusion of favorability that never really existed? Now, I appreciated what Matt Walsh had to say about this.
As Donald Trump kills federal funding for various NGOs and nonprofits, and as major corporations decide to scale back their activism, some of the left's biggest protest movements are falling apart. They're proving to be unsustainable. I mean, it's almost as if they were never actually that popular in the first place. Maybe the most extraordinary example of this phenomenon is the current state of Pride Month, which is set to take place, of course, in June. Now, when we released my film, What is a Woman, back in 2022, Pride Month had the backing of pretty much every Fortune 500 company on the planet. The organizers of various pride parades were flush with cash. They were setting the dominant narrative, one that valorized hedonism, narcissism, perversion, and child abuse. It was never explained exactly why these people needed lavish parades all over the country for weeks on end in order to celebrate their sexual interests. We were just supposed to accept it as a kind of quasi-religious ritual, and indeed, many people did accept it. But just 3 years later, it's clear that whatever power these people once had, they don't have very much of it anymore. We're now gearing up for the most muted, small-scale Pride Month that we've seen in a very long time. The organizers of some of the largest pride parades in the country are currently scrambling to raise money because their major corporate sponsors have stopped writing checks. And that includes sponsors who have been involved with these San Francisco pride events going back for more than a decade. And that's led to a funding shortfall that at the moment is threatening to tragically derail San Francisco's Pride Month, which is probably the largest.
Whatever the reason, the fact of the matter is Pride Month is nearing the level of recognition that it should have been given all along, which is none at all. And unhinged libs are definitely mad about it.
Which means it's the start of Pride Month. Now, while most people will sit here and say that the rainbow community is usually full of love and empathy and compassion, I'm specifically asking you to tap into that petty side. Yep, because there's 2 ways that we're going to be petty with Pride this year. We know that, unfortunately, there were a number of people in the rainbow community that voted for Velveeta Voldemort, the dollar store dictator. And you know full well that they're going to roll out to Pride and be all, community! No, honey. You don't have a community any longer. You don't get to vote against all of our interests and then come out and participate in the community like that. No, honey. So if you run into somebody and you know that they voted for the dollar store dictator, you're going to out them loudly at Pride for as many people to hear to make them uncomfortable and make them leave. You do not get to vote against our interests and then participate in our community events. The second way we are going to be petty is with prides and their sponsors. Now, I think that the bigger ones probably have stayed very far away from it because they know. But the yokel ones, the smaller ones that are more about families and community, well, money is money to a whole bunch of them. Now, you can check things like Goods Unite Us to see who they donated to, but if they're on public square, they're Yahtzees. So have fun at Pride, my petty betties. Remember, safety in numbers. I can't wait to see all the pictures.
So obviously, there are a couple of things that we need to address here. First, the only people who say that the rainbow community are full of love are the people who are activists in it. The truly loving people who might be gay, lesbian, or even trans have left this community and want nothing to do with it because, one, their sexuality is not their entire identity. Two, they do not support this agenda aimed at children. And three, they have gotten more hate and hostility from this community than from anybody else in their lives, especially once they've decided to think for themselves and distance themselves from it. Secondly, as we just saw with the Boise event, no one is going to show up, especially anybody who voted for the Velveeta dictator. But if you want to yell about who people voted for, go for it. You're going to find out once again that the only one who sees you as a victim is yourself. And lastly, this lovely woman exposed the fact that this community is not about love, compassion, or empathy ever, either during Pride Month or any other time of the year, because she specifically stated that anybody who does not give money to them, it doesn't mean that they're a human being with their own beliefs or their own interests or their own priorities. It automatically means that they are a schmatzi and that they are the kind of person who wants innocent people thrown in gas chambers, starved, and tortured. Those are the only two options. As you can probably guess, I am so glad that this is happening, and there have also been a few ideas floated around as to what this month should be dedicated to.
Tomorrow is June, and many people say that it's the start of Pride Month. But one organization wants to change that. Moms for Liberty wants to make June Parental Rights Month, as this year marks the 100th anniversary of Pierce versus Society of Sisters, the landmark Supreme Court decision that enshrined parental rights in America. Let's bring in Wisconsin ambassador.
Sounds good to me. Or we could just call it June and leave it at that. But what do you guys think? What are your ideas about what we should dedicate this month to? But that is all I have for you in this one. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Again, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button on this video and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you so much for watching. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.